Fashion trends are cyclical, and if the return of big, bold colors and huge teased hair have you reevaluating your closet, then it's time to understand the surprisingly attractive style choices of the 1980s. There's perhaps nothing more synonymous with 1980s fashion than shoulder pads, a trend that was popularized by celebrities like Princess Diana and Annie Lennox. And according to fashion analyst Gina Rogers, they're always ready to be revived. As she explained to The Sun in 2023, shoulder pads are always lingering in the background. It just takes a few fashion houses and celebrities to get the ball rolling, and bang, we're back in full 80s mode. While not everyone might be quite so enthusiastic about such a revival, you can't deny that shoulder pads have played a big role in the feminist movement. This structured silhouette is traditionally a more masculine look, but as women popularized it, they made a statement by dressing for themselves instead of the male gaze. Stark eyeshadow was a staple of 80s makeup. The messier, the better. Some people even rocked asymmetrical eyeshadow that wasn't blended very much, but that was just the look of the era. And let's not forget that most 80s eyeshadow wasn't in neutral shades, as it was all about bright and bold colors like pinks, blues, and oranges. There was plenty of freedom in embracing the messiness that can come with applying eyeshadow. Imagine getting ready for a night out and messing it all up, but then simply embracing the mistake. This colorful experimentation and anything goes mindset also opened the doors for cooler makeup looks to take hold in the future. When it comes to hair, the 80s were all about messy curls. Those who weren't blessed with naturally curly hair would often opt for perms, a process in which the hair is wrapped around rollers and then saturated in a chemical perm solution. The result is permanent, hence the name perm. Alas, they can cause damage, especially if done frequently. However, the perms of today are done differently and are safer than they used to be. As hairstylist Michelle O'Connor explained to Birdie in 2023, whereas perms in the 80s were rolled on tight rods, crunchy, and resulted in a stiff, harsh appearance, the perms of today flow more naturally and appear softer. So creating as much volume as possible is a great way to revive the 80s with a lot less damage to our locks than our parents' generation. When it comes to exercise fashion, the 80s were a rather peculiar decade. Workout videos were popularized by icons like Jane Fonda, and they featured some very specific fashion trends. Women often exercised in colorful leotards over stockings, with sweatbands, leg warmers, and pretty much anything else that could add more color.
Left, right, left, right.
During this time, working out was more than just a way of staying healthy. It was also an opportunity to showcase an eclectic fashion sense, and worries about overheating seemed to be non-existent. Also during this time, athleisure emerged as a style that you could rock even when you weren't working out. Since then, though, typical athleisure has dramatically changed, and leotards haven't enjoyed much of a comeback, at least not yet. Leg warmers, on the other hand, have re-emerged, but this time as a way to add some warmth during the colder months. With all the ultra-colorful and bold fashion trends, the 80s are unsurprisingly considered one of the most maximalist fashion eras ever. With the voluminous hair, colorful and edgy makeup, and vibrant and bold silhouettes, the decade nourished an overall style movement that was all about adding more. One of the most famous maximalists of all time was Cyndi Lauper, who often paired clashing patterns for a punk rock aesthetic. She proved that fashion has no boundaries, as she continually surprised audiences with her unique looks again and again. While maximalism has been a re-emerging trend over the years, it's never quite reached its 80s peak. But there are definitely some people who would like to see that change. As maximalist influencer Sarah Campos-Arconi told Elle in 2023, "I love the rebellious side of maximalism, and the fact that there are absolutely no rules except wear whatever you want." One trend that epitomized the campiness of 80s fashion is feathers. The boho interpretation is typically smaller feathers in neutral colors, but the feathers in the 80s were often colorful and large. They were typically featured around collars and sleeves, and the feathered scarf was also a must. Fashion shows at the time took it a step further by frequently showcasing full-on feather jackets, which are predictably voluminous and puffy. This trend was also popular among the rich and famous, with musicians like Cher rocking it just as flawlessly as royals like Princess Diana. The trend eventually faded away though, perhaps due to the difficulty of maintaining the shape and quality of feathered garments. While we might still see a feathered ensemble every now and then, this trend has mostly remained in the past, with the major exception of drag culture, where feathers reign supreme alongside the likes of rhinestones. If you wanted to be trendy in the 80s, you absolutely had to tease your hair. At the time, volume was everything, and tresses needed to be big and dramatic. As hairstylist Andrew Fitzsimmons explained to InStyle, teasing hair is the technique of combing your hair in order to create volume at the root of your hair. Nowadays, though, we know all too well that teasing isn't exactly the healthiest thing for your hair, as excessive teasing can cause breakage. However, there are ways to do it safely and carefully, as long as you don't make it a daily habit. As Fitzsimmons advised, to tease the hair, use a fine-tooth comb to carefully comb the hair down toward your scalp. This causes the hair to tangle in a way that creates a voluminous final look. Right in line with the theme of maximalism, the most popular piece of jewelry in the 1980s was undoubtedly the statement earring. Perhaps you're thinking of the classic hoop or chandelier style, but we're not talking about those. In the 80s, a statement earring was probably touching your shoulders, and it often featured geometric designs, feathers, and bold and bright colors. In this decade, earrings also became more popular and widely accepted in men's fashion. In the years since, statement earrings have remained popular, though they tend not to be quite so dramatically huge, and that's probably for the best. Big and heavy earrings can stretch the earlobes and cause pain, especially if worn consistently or for long periods of time. So while we love an eye-catching piece of jewelry, the trend of rocking statement earrings every time you leave the house deserves to stay locked away in the 80s.
Do you want to wear bracelets but on your sides of your head?
The 80s allowed fashion to become more adventurous and experimental than ever before, which included rocking lingerie as outerwear. In particular, bustier tops, famously popularized by 80s icon Madonna, became a staple for plenty of nights out. Some would opt to follow in the pop star's footsteps by rocking the bustier top only, while others preferred wearing it over a long-sleeved shirt for an edgier and more unexpected look. Either way, bustier tops were one of the decade's most controversial trends. In the 2020s, rocking lingerie as everyday clothing isn't nearly as shocking. And while the bustier trend isn't as popular as it used to be, it's still around. However, the bralette might be the more popular option, as many tend to go for something more comfortable and breathable. Even though edgy and fun fashion is most typical of the 80s, some trends of the era promoted a more luxurious aesthetic. One of them was the wide-brimmed hat, which wasn't reserved just for royals. In fact, they were a popular choice for plenty of people, and the fact that they offered extra protection from the sun and concealed bad hair days was just an added bonus. Since trends tend to cycle every few decades, it's not surprising that the wide-brimmed trend was actually a retro resurgence in the 80s, as it was previously popular back in the 1940s. As fashion historian Sarah Bird explained to Business Insider in 2019, within the last 300 years of fashion, you can see really clearly where certain decades line up with each other. In the 80s, there was a moment where people revisited fashion of the 40s. The 80s allowed this trend to evolve from a glamorous accessory to something more practical that works with many different styles while also still providing a touch of elegance. Cyndi Lauper was a noted fan of the trend, with her headwear always adding an extra color or pattern to her look. There are plenty of wonderful hairstyles that include the word side, like the side part and the side fringe. But we have to draw the line at the high side ponytail, as we hope that it stays buried in the 80s forever. The messiness caused by teased hair would make the ponytail extra voluminous and disheveled, yet somehow it was considered attractive at the time thanks to all that teasing. Today's ponytails are thankfully a lot more sleek and polished, not to mention much lower, which doesn't draw attention away from the person wearing them. After all, the last thing anyone wants is to be overshadowed by their own hairstyle.
It's gotta be no, dog.
Sequined clothing was a major hit in the 80s, and not just a couple of sequins here and there. The decade called for extravagant fashion, and when it came to this particular trend, that meant an outfit covered in multicolored sequins. A look that was sequined in just one color was simply too bland for the 80s, even if that color was bright and bold. The sequin trend has returned a few times since, most notably around the turn of the century, with looks like the sequined mini dress. Also, much like feathers, sequins are everywhere in drag costuming. And of course, since early aughts style re-emerged in the early 2020s, sequins came back in style once again. Today, sequin pieces are still very fun and stylish, but they're styled much more differently than before. Instead of bright, bold colors paired with ultra-voluminous hair, we see them a lot more in gold and silver tones. Just look up the outfits worn at Beyoncé's Renaissance tour, and you'll see plenty of shimmery looks. Even though acid wash jeans originated in the 1960s thanks to California surfers, most people probably associate this popular denim style with the 80s. Back then, it was the Italian brand Rifle Jeans that was most well known for this type of wash, though you can find this style sold by countless brands nowadays. While it was the punk rock scene that helped elevate the trend, eventually every cool kid had a pair of acid wash jeans and a whole closet filled with even more acid wash items like denim jackets and button-ups. In the 2020s, acid wash denim remains a cool and stylish look, but we'll rarely see anybody rocking something like a Canadian tuxedo in an acid wash style. Instead, today's acid is a lot subtler and softer, almost never giving us that high contrast in tone that the 80s were famous for. It's abundantly clear that color was a major part of the 80s aesthetic, and what was significantly more popular in that decade than any before was neon. In fact, neons were so commonplace that they were treated like neutrals, and different shades were combined for an ultra-vibrant head-to-toe look. A neon-colored tracksuit could be casual daily attire, while a neon miniskirt and top were perfect for a night out. Not to mention that those who got their hands on a neon eyeshadow could ensure that their makeup matched their outfit. Since then, neon has had some resurgences, most notably in the late 2010s. But just like most 80s trends that have been revived, it never came back quite in the same way. Instead, modern neon fashion is all about sleek cuts and silhouettes and ensuring that you're not going overboard with the mixing of different neon colors.